Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Shannon from Good Fruit. Welcome back. And today we're going to be starting a two-part series on motives. And we're going to start off in this first part talking about the motives of others. So where Jesus has had me in the last few months is starting to realize that a lot of times in just walking out life and just being, in the world constantly, that we start to position ourselves in certain places and places that he calls us into, and sometimes places that we just decide to go ourselves. And I have found that there was a recent thing that I did lately that I got myself into is exactly what Jesus said to me, that it became very apparent that when I am around other people, I am not doing the greatest job of realizing the motives of other people. And to be honest with you, most of the time, I'm not quite thinking about it. And that's because my own motive sometimes is to put myself in places that I think that I should be, because I am trying to position myself. And this is something that I've done my whole entire life. And everybody that's watching here, we've all done this because we've been taught to exist in this world that we need to take life by the horns, take the bull by the horns, and that we cannot get things done unless we take action. And so we've learned to position ourselves to get into the places that we desire to move ourselves. And Jesus is starting to show me that when I have decided to position myself and I've getting myself into something instead of asking him where it is that I should be going and who it is that I should be doing things with, he's started to show me that, like, one, my motive is to position myself. And we're going to talk about that next week as our motives. But today is that the places that I've put myself into, the people that I've hung out with, or the people that I've helped in the past, the motives of those people are not necessarily the greatest. And it's just, the reality is that we can't look at what we think we see in other people when we see people doing certain things, that we can't judge according to what we see. So let's start off here in John 7:24. Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. Now, like I said, I'm making my own assumptions based on what it is that I see. But as you can see here, John talks about not looking at things and judging according to its appearance, but judging to righteous judgment. Well, I'm not righteous. So therefore, we need to turn to God, who is righteous, and get that proper judgment. And this is what I was saying earlier about I've positioned myself and I've gotten myself into things, and I start to talk to people all the time. I'm a social person, and I'm immediately like, I see people that, like, I want to help all the time. And he's telling me, like, what you're seeing is not actually what's happening. So let's get into Proverbs 21:2. Man sees outward actions, the Lord examines the heart. There was something that happened today, and, I'm going to share this story because I'm sure we've all seen it walking around Vegas or driving around Vegas, that we see people on the side of the road all the time. There's a man that is on the corner of the road that I see all the time, and I've rode by him, I don't know, at least a dozen times, like a week, because he's on the corner near my house. And Jesus has never said to me to help this man. There's plenty of people that Jesus has positioned me and asked me to help. And this man, he's never asked me to, like, do anything. And I'm not saying that, like, I have a lot to give, but, sometimes you have enough to give to, like, help somebody. And, that's great. This gentleman today had the biggest hole in the back of his pants, and he always has his sign. And there was just, like, this demeanor of, like, it was a very obvious need that, like, this person's asking for help, but, like, it's going to be really hard for him to get help when half of him is hanging out the back of his shorts. So I'm with a friend of mine who also hears Jesus, and my first motive, and I turned to my friend, I was like, we need to go buy this guy's shorts. I'm like, if he's going to get help from people, like, there's no way that people are going to help him when he's, like, half hanging out of his pants. And so I go to the store, I'm like looking for shorts, and as I'm picking out things, Jesus was like, did you ask me? And I go, I didn't. He goes, your heart is in a good place. He goes, but ask me if that gentleman actually needs it. So then I was like, okay, well, does he need it? And he's like, no. And then Jesus gives me the question to ask. Ask me if this man has more than you have. And I thought that was interesting because my assumption, according to what I've seen, his outward actions and what I see going on versus I'm wearing clothes, I'm fully covered, I'm not on the street asking for help, I'm not begging for money, I don't look like this man, right? And Jesus then tells me that this man has more than I have. And then that sunk in that I cannot determine the motives of others based on what it is that I see. So Jeremiah 17:9-10, the heart is deceitful. God searches minds and hearts. Like I said, the first thing I saw, and I even turned to my friend, was like, I can't see somebody like that and not help. My immediate reaction was to go help. And the position of like me making an assumption, it's a great thing because the need is clearly there. But then when I ask God if there's an actual need and he tells me and he corrects me on my motive to help, that your heart is there and this person is deceiving. He's actually out there deceiving people. And most of the people that he takes money from, he has more than. And I didn't get into the true motive of what this guy is doing because it was more about what it is that Jesus was trying to do with me. But it's one of those things that we can't trust what it is that we have and what it is that we see with our own eyes. We need to turn to God with everything. So that brings me to my first point. Do not trust what you see. Our eyes are blind to the hearts and motive of others. We, as Christians, our call is to be love, but we have to go to the center of love to ask how it is that God desires for us to love others. And it's for him to say what it is that we're going to be doing for those around us. Now, this gets me into another story about things that I've gotten myself into lately. There are so many people that will come to you and talk you up, right? And as a girl, I'm going to be very honest that people are talking me up all the time on a daily basis. And the reality is in this world, when you have something that other people want, whether it is your skill or whether it is like your position that you're in, if they want to get in the same rooms that you are in, whatever it is their motive is to be friends with you, they're going to use these beautiful words to, butter you up, honeypot you up. And Jesus is always like telling me, people's motives when they reach out. Because sometimes, like when you think that you should be having a conversation with people or you like say to yourself like, oh, I really like this person. Like I should help them. Whatever it is that they're asking. Jesus has started to tell me, like, how do you start to become friends with people, right? And like, how do you like position yourself? He's like, people are positioning themselves in the same way that you would position yourself in any other place. Like if you want to become friends with somebody that like, you're obviously going to be nice with them. And sometimes those motives are good to be friends with people like that. And sometimes your motives are not the greatest when it comes to like smooth talking or like warming your way into somebody's heart. So Psalms 55:21, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. So there's another part of like understanding that the motives of people, like let's think about Judas, right? Judas was in the 12 and he was close to Jesus. And even before, and this is so crazy, right? That even before he gave Jesus up and sold him for money, right? He kissed him on the lips. There's something really poignant about the fact that like, your friends you keep close, and there's like that saying that your enemies you keep closer. But the question becomes like, why? Like you want to watch people, but the reality is like your enemies are going to be the closest people to you, and the motives of people to be around you are not necessarily pure. So you can't trust what it is that people are saying and their motives, especially when they're really dark. Like, they're going to hide it with even more sugar. And, you don't poison people right away. You feed them poison over time. There's a certain type of people that, as you're Christians, that you start to walk and you grow in intimacy greater with God, like the devil comes to test you. He'll come to test you. And if he can't move you this way, he will use other people. So you have to be very careful about trusting what it is that people say, and especially when it seems too good to be true. Acts 20:29-30. Grievous wolves enter in among you, not sparing the flock. Not sparing the flock. Wolves are wolves. Their main motive is to come and enter and destroy. Jesus reminds me all the time that, like, if their heart is not for me and they don't listen to me, the question becomes now, who are they listening to? And, it's not always necessarily going to be the devil, because there are other things that are speaking in this world. And the greatest enemy that we have inside of all of us is the identity of self. And the self is just as dangerous as the devil. And when it comes to people being who they are, whether they align themselves with God in a good way, that there's a lot of people that are wolves in this world, and the world is teaching them to be wolves. Like, you either get devoured or be the one that devours people. And that's how people get ahead. So we cannot be Christians in a place and not be listening to God and understanding the motives of others, because it's really dangerous. And the wolves, when they enter into the pen, they're not leaving anything behind. They need to conquer and they need to destroy everyone. And they will not spare anyone amongst the flocks when it comes to getting where it is they want to position themselves in the world. So 2 Corinthians 11:13-15. Such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves, and no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Just like I was telling you earlier about Judas, even before he gave up Jesus to be hung on the cross, he kissed him on the lips. An action of love that turned into an action of deceit. The greatest, betrayal that we could ever imagine was what Judas did. And that was somebody that partook upon the Great Commission. He was healing. He had the Holy Spirit upon him. He spent time with God incarnate here, and he gave him up. There are plenty things that look beautiful in this world, like Satan himself is an angel. In angelic form, he is beautiful. He is one of the most beautiful creations in all of this world. Obviously not as great as God, but angels are beautiful. But just because you're beautiful on the outside doesn't mean that your heart is pure. And more often than not, we can't judge a beautiful book by its cover, because we've seen plenty of beautiful things in this world. And when you unmask the beautiful thing in front of you, you start to realize that there's only darkness behind that beautiful mask. So when we talk about things being hidden, the reality is Satan presents himself as an angel of light. And my second point goes into this beautifully, is that hidden ulterior motives are dangerous because they manipulate trust and lead us away from God's truth. When we rely on the surface impression, we risk being harmed by their hidden agendas. Jesus was telling me the other day, and there was a gentleman that I was speaking with, and they seemed really nice, don't get me wrong. And there was everything in me that I trusted that this person was being nice. I was helping them out. I was doing awesome things with them. I was showing them skills that I liked. And there was something that happened, and Jesus literally said to me, and this is where this story of motives comes in, and we started going into this, and it was this person's motive, when it's hidden, he's it's dangerous. to be around people that have ulterior motives, it's very dangerous, because when you present a certain way, which is how Satan presents when he shows himself as the angel of light, but the true motive is to destruct, to manipulate, and take advantage of, like the surface level of like, I'm just trying to help. Jesus revealed some things about this person that when I sat there and there was something that happened, I was like, my immediate reaction was like fear, because I put myself and I positioned myself around somebody that thought I could trust. And I thought I could trust because they were hanging out around friends of mine. And I also thought I could trust them because they seemed meek. They seemed like not outgoing. There was nothing on the front side of everything that would tell me that this person is as dangerous as Jesus said that they are. And I sat there when he told me who this person was at the center and the things that this person does and continues to do. And this thing that this person planned to do to me, I got really scared, because I sat there and I thought to myself, this is how close I was. And there was something that I decided to do that night. They were like very genuinely being like, I'll give you a ride home. And Jesus very sternly said to me, you will ride your bike home. And I was like, what? And it was like the way in which he said it. It was like when you call your parents to ask them for permission, and like when there's like the sternness to their voice that you don't question, you listen and you do and you act and you go, yes. And then when I got home the next day, I started going into him. I go, what was the problem? And he starts talking to me about these motives. And he starts talking to me about the motives of others. And from that thing I was telling you about earlier, this place that I positioned myself in, this was one of many people in this position, in this place that I went to, that I decided to position myself, that I've seen these different people act a certain way and do certain things to me. And this one was the scariest one of all of them. And the rest of them, to be honest with you, weren't that bad. They were just obnoxious. Like, people that want to take advantage of like the fact that like you're going to do something for free. And then they like position themselves to, say certain things or be like, well, I got you this thing. I'm like, yeah, but it was free. Like if I'm giving you this thing for free, none of that matters. But so out of all the things that I was like walking into for doing this thing, hanging out with these people and going to this place that I didn't ask about, I start to see the different layers of hidden ulterior motives. And then the deepest level of one, like how dangerous. And that one would have been something that I would have had to deal with. Obviously, God, and I have this relationship with God, he made sure that I asked, and he was very stern. And like, to be honest with you, there's certain things that I just don't do unless I ask God. And getting in people's cars, especially when you're hanging out with people and I'm riding my bike and drinking, is one of those things I don't do unless I ask something. So, like as much as, there was this place where I got afraid of me making my own decisions, God made sure and has walked me through this process enough to know to ask. Have I still not asked with certain things? It's going to come these times where like that's going to happen. But I've learned very recently in the last few weeks, because this has been like a month long of us talking about this and him walking this out, that we cannot rely on this surface impression, and we really risk being harmed by others. And there's only one way to be covered by God, and that's to ask and to be obedient. Hebrews 4:12-13. God's word discerns thoughts and intentions. Nothing is hidden from him. And this is the reality is like, we can't go by what it is that we think we know. We cannot trust what it is that we think we see. And all of the actions that can be displayed in you will never actually show you the true motives in others. And I've been talking about like the scary, the bad things, but there is also these things where it's like, more often than not, sometimes I take things a certain way. And that's because I'm from New York, and everything, like when you do certain things, that there's a motive and there's something behind it. And, like when people are dismissive or, like in my opinion, slow and idiots, and it's not that they're slow and it's not that they're idiots, it's that, they're potentially learning something for new and I'm impatient. So even like these types of things, like we cannot discern the thoughts and the intentions of others based on their actions. And we've been talking about like people hiding their stuff, but we also have to just remember that like sometimes people do something because they've been hurt a certain way. So their intention sometimes when they act a certain way isn't necessarily about their intention to hurt other people. Without God, without Him in our lives, taking things away from us and like us unburdening ourselves, everybody that we go out into the world and see like is walking this life without Him, and they're dealing with their own traumas and they're carrying their own baggage. And you yourself, before you came to God, were carrying that baggage. And so you have to give everybody the same grace that God gives you and be patient with people. So, you know, like we've been talking about these motives, and we're getting into that, you know, part of next week about our motives. Like we have to not always be so concentrated on like people acting a certain way and not understanding like the thing and the root behind what it is they're doing. There are people that are malicious, and then there are people that are just acting out of the things that they carry through this world. No one goes to this world without having trauma. So, you know, like that statement of hurt people, there is just these things that people carry inside them. And a lot of people, like their intention, right? Their flesh's intention obviously is something completely different. So we have to always ask God, is their intention actually them? And are they acting out of their own will, or are they acting out of the will of the flesh? And like when you don't have God, most people are reacting out of their flesh. And not everybody is always in agreement, but stress and trauma and the wounds that we get from this world will have us react a certain way. And sometimes those intentions are not necessarily to hurt other people. Those intentions are to feel less hurt. And your reaction sometimes, or their reaction sometimes, right, is acting out of what it is that they've experienced and what it is that they know. So you just always have to go to God and discern the intentions and the thoughts of other people, because nothing is hidden from Him. So Psalms 32:8, I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eye on you. So when Jesus was giving me this, like I told you, I asked Him, like when the person offered to give me a ride, the way in which God said no, it was stern. And it was like there was an intensity to it. But it was like the intensity of like, what I'm telling you is to keep you safe. And obviously me and him went through it later. And the reality is like, God's not taking things away from you because He's an evil God. He's taking things away from you sometimes because the things that we have in our lives, or the people we are around, their intention is death and destruction and hurt and harm. And so it's just like a child, like a young baby learning to walk, right? The mother or the father is walking near them and like gently holding their hands, and every once in a while you're going to let go, and then you're going to see a dangerous thing that's coming on. And what do? You don't let your child go and walk up and fall. No, you grab them and you move them. God's a little less abrasive, right? He's not going to physically pick you up and move you. He's going to instruct you, because everything is about communication and being in agreement, and He will allow you to make mistakes. But that mistake that I was almost going to make, that was a mistake that He was not going to allow me to make, because He knew that I would hear Him. He knew that I would understand when He said no, that I was going to listen. And there was this tone. And this is what it is to understand and get to know God in a certain place with intimacy, is to understand how it is that He will counsel us, how it is that He will walk us through everything, and then how it is that He's going to teach us. Because there's plenty of things that I didn't listen to, right? When I made the decision to do this event and work this thing, I made the decision, I said yes, and there was enough time for me to like kind of back out of it. And I turned to him and I was like, it's okay, right? And he's like, sure. And then when like things started unfolding with this event, I was like, dang, dude. And I was like, what do I do? And he's like, well, you got yourself into this, so you have to, you have to do it. Like, what do you do? Not show up? You're not going to do it? And I was like, no, I'm going to do it. But it was like, once he said to me, you got yourself into this, I already knew. I decided and I made a decision. And then I was going to find out why this decision was not the greatest decision to make. And it wasn't that big of a deal. But clearly it was because, I found myself in many circumstances dealing with many of certain people's and dealing with their not so good motives, some obviously worse than others. Deuteronomy 5:33. Walking in obedience to all the Lord your God has commanded you, so that you may live and prosper and prolong your days. I don't know how more obvious that could get. And I'm going to share another little story about somebody else that I met recently. And you're going to be like, Shannon, who are these people and where are you meeting them? It's called the internet. And, nowadays it's so easy to meet people online all the time. And being a girl, you meet people all day, every day, whether you walk into the street or you go online, if you're posting online, there's just people reaching out to you on a constant basis. And I don't know if it's just that season that we're in, but what I've started to notice as I start to ask God more about people's motives, and when he tells me not to do or not to talk to people, that when I start talking to them, and then he starts telling me the questions to ask him, that I find out that these moments are not always great, right? And there was somebody recently that was reaching out to me and everything was like, ooh, this is a cool friend. They want to hang out. They just want to be friends. And I was very clear when certain people are reaching out to me where the motive is they're kind of interested in you. I'm not interested in most of that nowadays, just because God has already told me where I've positioned myself, that there's, not necessarily dating anytime soon, and that he's still preparing my heart for other people. So there was somebody that reached out and I knew that the intention was that they were interested. So for me, and I was like, well, Jesus is telling me not to entertain the conversation, and I'm still talking to the person. Well, I'm like, well, it's okay if I tell them that I don't want to date them, right? And then they're still offering to take me out and drive in the nice cars and be passenger princess, or, all these, cool things that sound great to a blonde girl that lives in the world, I'm going to be honest, me, Shannon, really enjoys being taken to nice places, that's the world I used to exist in. Very nice being a girl. Very nice being a girl, but Jesus is your motive is not good. And then this person's motive was just as destructive as the other person's motive. And this person's motive, and Jesus brought me to a place spiritually to show me what came along with this person. This person had multiple attachments, had multiple things going on spiritually that were not good, very much not good. I went to bed that night and I asked for Jesus to show me who this person was, because he kept being I'm telling you, don't talk to this person. And I'm like, they sound great. And everything was ooh, I get to be a blonde girl and I get to have this cool friend and they're going to be somebody that I can hang out with. And it's so cool and everything sounds so great. And when I went to sleep that night, there was many things that I encountered, and a couple of them touched me spiritually. One of them was very scary, and the other, actually, they were all really scary. I'm going to be honest. They were all really scary. And I woke up in the morning and I was that was a lot going on. And there was a lot of things that I saw that were really dark. And Jesus was their intention is really, really, really bad. Very bad. The things that they do to other people are not good. The people that they surround themselves with are not good. And the things that I saw, and it doesn't matter necessarily to go into detail of what I saw, but the person that wanted to take me out and do all these nice things, their motive was just as dark, and the outcome of doing any of these things with these people would have not prolonged my days. It would have made my days very short and very painful for the rest of my life. So there's just these things that you have to start to ask God, and the timing. And then Jesus even said to me, because I was saying earlier, Satan will come in many ways, and he will physically come to you at certain points and offer you plenty of things in the world. And depending on how you walk with God and how deep you go with God, the deeper you get and the better your relationship and the closer your relationship with God is, you'll start to realize that the world will present itself in any way it can, just the way it happened to Jesus in the desert. the world will present to you. And it will present to you physically, spiritually, and all these things, and you can't trust it. The motive of the world is death. And we talked about this in the last week's message, is remembering Lot's wife. She turned into a pillar of salt. So when Jesus says to do something, I command you, when Jesus says to do anything, it is a command, and we are to be obedient. It's so that you may live and prosper and prolong your days. So my final point is that when God reveals the true nature of those around us, we must listen and obey. His warnings are meant to protect us, and when we follow them, we stay safe in his purpose. I know a lot of the things that we talked about today are really just about protecting ourselves from the motives of others, understanding and seeing the motives of others, not through our eyes, but through his eyes. But the deepest part of all of this, and we talked about this in the last message, was that if we're in communication with God, it's about understanding what it is that we're supposed to be doing, where it is that we're supposed to be going, who it is we're supposed to be doing things with. And all of that lies in communication and being obedient. And it's a learning process. It's a learning process, like kids, if you ever have kids or those that are watching that have kids, you are going to, as a parent, when you want to know why your parents are always asked you so many things, we're always talking to you all the time and being like, why do I have to ask for everything? This is why. You haven't lived in this world the way Jesus lived in this world. Jesus lived in this world in full connection with God, and every single thing that he did was out of the purpose of the kingdom, out of the direction of the Father. And when you join in communion with him and you step into being a new creation, we are learning that new process. So we have to start to talk to God and understanding the motives of others. And then now, next week, we're going to be talking about our motives and about how our motives now need to be positioned by God. And this is what we're going to be going into next week. So until next time, stay blessed.